Okay, thank you. So thank you once again to AfLIA for this wonderful opportunity to put this webinar. So we look at
hello, Dr. Salihu. Sorry, Salubi. Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Because of the internet, we would advise probably that you turn off your video, and then let's run with the presentation. Probably later when we get to the questions and answers, you could turn on your video. Thank you.
The video is actually off now, so okay. Okay, so I'll just carry on. I'll wait if this is all clear. And data like in the African continent, so can it, but in the global north, it's really not the we have research institutions, and within institutions, generate research. So this particular presentation more on academic librarians is really librarians we also deal with these from the government. All of those are things that public librarians do. So if you've been left out or being targeted, things. So what is data librarianship and why should we care about data librarianship? What is it actually? Who can we refer to as a data librarian? So you put in someone who actually engages in the management of research data. Now, within the social sciences, it's always been, or traditionally within LI, more like for the research, I design my questionnaire, and after the questionnaire is designed, I administer a particular survey, and afterwards, if I wish to publish, I publish. That's the end of the thing. But outside of the social sciences as well, for those who are doing either medical or those who desktop research within the computer science field, and social informatics, or those who are even doing laboratory work like chemistry or physics, research is generated. And because set of data generated, it's the research life cycle, or the data life cycle in itself doesn't just begin and end with the collection and the dissemination of the research results. So we're looking way beyond that. And because librarians, we've always been in the knowledge management space, with my books.
Hello, sorry, Dr. Salibu. Dr. Salubi. Hello, Dr. Salubi.
I can hear you.
This is Monica. It's becoming a bit difficult for us to hear you. I don't know if you could talk a bit louder or change your browser. We are finding it very difficult to hear you clearly, and I believe participants would like to ask questions.
Let me check.
Yeah, no, the line is breaking. If you could just swap your service provider, I think it will be fine. We can hear it very clearly, but your voice is. So colleagues, Thank you for being
Can
with
you
us.
hear me now?
We are having some technological challenges from the end of the presenter, and we will be with you very soon. Kindly give us a minute or two to bounce back. Thank you very much.
Okay, how about now? Is it better?
Oh, perfect, Salibu. This is perfect. Kindly go ahead. Thank you very much, colleagues. Let's go on. Thank you. Go ahead.
Dr. Mensah, is this okay?
Yes, Salibu, this is fine. If you can hear
Okay.
me, this is okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, sorry about that. So, because research data, like I was saying, it's actually much more than just beginning a research and disseminating that research. Librarians have been able to see that opportunity in that space.
Sorry, Salibu, for interrupting again. Sorry, colleagues. Dr. Salibu, please, could you start from the beginning? Because we couldn't hear anything from the beginning. So if we could take it right from the beginning, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm still in my first slide, and we need no further introduction. I'll just try to move fast so we still finish within time. And I was basically asking, what is data librarianship and what is it about? Who is a data librarian? So just more like a heads up, this webinar is going to be taking more of the form of a question. And I'm going to try to be giving responses to this question. So who is a data librarian? Basically anyone who is an information professional engaged in the management of research data. And this might not be research data alone. Like I mentioned, for those in public library spaces, you might actually think, but I don't manage any research data. This could actually be government data. This could be smart city data, for example. And it's any form of data that is used as a resource to support either decision-making within your government, within your local council, or to expand the frontiers of knowledge within the research space and academic institutions. So you as a librarian, you are not the researcher, but you actually coming in as a niche of managing the research data or making sure that this particular sort of resource that informs or that helps in the generation of new knowledge is preserved and maintained in such a manner that beyond the life cycle of that particular research that data informs, it still becomes useful beyond that particular set of time. And if you do that, we can actually say that you are a data librarian. Now, what other things do data librarians do? You offer support services to researchers. So this could be especially for those who are in academic libraries. And postgraduate students, for example, your master's and your doctoral students, they primarily at the institution to do research and generate new knowledge. And some data librarians take it a step further to also teach, apart from data literacy, the data analytics tools to be used, which we're going to be seeing later towards as we progress in this webinar. So within a broader summarization, if we want to actually talk about data librarianship and who a data librarian is, we can actually say it's the job that you do includes the processing and the creation, the organization, the documentation, making accessible and making data reusable in a qualitative manner. So
ensuring that the data that informs a particular research still stays and the lifespan is still useful beyond that particular research. We can actually, once you engage in such duty and activity, we can call you a data librarian. And the role of the librarian, basically, you are to support researchers. You are to support, preserve that data from your government on that smart city project, or so that anyone and everyone can have citizenship participation within that light. So that would be for mainly those within the public library sphere. Now, what do data librarians actually do? What are the specific activities and services that data librarians actually render? And why is data librarianship important? Because, I mean, we've been doing without, we didn't have this role, and research have been going on. Now, for many funding bodies that fund research, for those of you in academic institutions, you might be familiar with this. Many of the funding institutions now are requesting for what is called a data management plan. And they also want researchers to make their data for any research that they fund, that they make their data that informs the results from that particular research publicly available. So these are requirements from many funding institutions right now. And why is this the case? Because funding research is expensive. I mean, it's capital intensive. And because it is capital intensive, this is a particular job within the academic library, within the academic institutions and higher education space that easily fits within what we as librarians or what librarians have been doing. So it's not a case of research have been going on, so I don't think there's going to be a demand for this. Actually, the demand for data librarianship hasn't even taken off yet on the African continent. You can actually look at it in that light, because several of the African countries are still not at the same level in terms of research funding and research requirements. Research data management is also not a thing or a top priority for many governments and for many high institutions, of course, because the funding is really not there. So with regards to demand, the demand is there. So what do? I'll take an example. Mr. Boy is a researcher, or Professor Boy is a researcher at the institution that she works, and he is about to apply to the World Health Organization, just hypothetically, or to any research funding body, to fund his research. And the research funding body like the WHO, for example, says, okay, we need a research data management plan. So tell us what you want to do. Tell us how you're going to be collecting the data for your research. Tell us how you're going to manage this data. Tell us how this data is going to be analyzed. Does your institution have what is called a research data management plan? This is your duty as a data librarian to design one for your institution. And if particularly a researcher within your institution actually has need of a data management plan, it's part of your duty to actually design one tailored towards that particular research. And these are the demands. You know, it's one thing to write a proposal for a grant, and it's another thing to be telling me about data. So this is where you as the data librarian comes in, because this is what you do. You need not have the expertise of Professor Boy, who is, for example, a human ecologist or whatever discipline that he's into. All you're speaking is data. So the data that is being collected, how are you going to ensure that it is reusable and it's interoperable, such that beyond the lifespan of Professor Boy's research, that data is still available and anyone could get access to that data and reproduce the results. So another thing, you as a data librarian, you also ensuring that the cooking up of data is really not there, because that's another problem that we're trying to stem. Even though we're talking about open access, we also want a situation where with open access, there is also research integrity. So open access in one way actually helps fight that. So you as the data librarian, you make the data available. And once the data is available, you tell us, Professor Boyd says, this is the results that I had. And then we are able to reproduce that results. We're able to run that particular data and get the same result. So we're here ensuring research integrity, or that's part of your job as a data librarian. And something else is this the future of LIS? Is data librarianship the future of LIS? I don't particularly have an answer to that question, but I know it's part of the future of LIS. Technology has shaped LIS and the information profession in more ways that we could actually think of. I can't remember, even though I'm an information professional, I'm a librarian, or I can't remember the last time I actually walked into a library, like a physical structure of a library, to borrow a book and check out a book. But that doesn't mean I don't use library resources. So that is the form of transformation that technology has actually made to our profession. And there are those who are outside actually looking at it. Is a degree in LIS still worth it? Is there still anything good that LIS can offer? The answer, I would say, yes, because the technology is actually an enabler for us to be able to function better as knowledge workers, as preservers of knowledge, as those who make sure that research integrity as data librarians is actually ensured. So the shaping and the setting of the agenda for the sustainability of LIS in some ways or partly lies in our roles, or in data librarianship role. So that's one way that the LIS profession would actually be sustained into the future. Of course, the training of future researchers as well is another thing that is also going to be coming in as part of your role as a data librarian. Okay, so what do data librarians actually work with? Because we've been talking about data librarians and all of that. Doesn't mean I'm a statistical analyst. Well, that's not really what you are. But there are a number of tools that we can work with as data librarian, or that you can work with us, or that data librarians actually work with. Some of these tools are proprietary. So by proprietary, there is a license for it, and you actually would need to acquire that license. They're not open source, while others are open source as well. So those open source tools we can of course, take advantage of. And those open source tools are necessary because, of course, we're in Africa. This is Africa. We always have challenges. I'm not sure if I should use the word always, but we have plethora of challenges. Talk about funding, if we were to talk about data librarianship and the use of proprietary tools, for examples, funding could be a challenge, and it's like your institution says, okay, we don't actually have that kind of budget right now. Such challenges are there. Skill sets demands, they are there. This particular area of librarianship is as important as it is. If we don't have the right skill sets to drive it forward, we'll definitely not be able to take full advantage of it. So skill set challenges is also a problem. And how can we develop the skill sets that we need to take full advantage of our own data? Because at the end of the day, when you also making use of proprietary solutions, the countries and the companies that owns those those software, they also have access to your data. So how long is our data actually going to be in the hands of those who do not actually have our best interest at heart? If you look at these search engines, for example, they really don't have your best interest at heart. Of course, your data is being monetized and being used in all sort of ways that one may not even fully comprehend. So how long is that actually going to continue? Why don't we be able to actually raise our own skill sets, and we also use our data and have laws that protect our data within our own jurisdiction in Africa? So that will also be another challenge, because policies are also the thing. Not many countries in Africa actually have privacy policies, data privacy policies, and where these policies still exist, many of them, they are not being implemented. So those are kind of the challenges that we actually have. But despite these challenges, opportunities abound, because sometimes we are blessed with problems if we're able to look beyond the immediate problem and take advantage of them as solutions. So yes, this is Africa. Yes, we have our challenges in Africa, and data librarianship can definitely still thrive on the continent as well, if we look at the right places. So how can we get started in any case, because that's very important. So the first thing we want to actually, or that I would say it's very important, is familiarization. And when I'm talking about familiarization here, it's quite important to know how data is organized. And this is usually the foundation for any research project. Of course, the data in itself is the foundation if we're talking about any research. The data is quite important, because that's what informs the results that's going to come out of that particular study. So many researchers have their data either in tabular formats or in spreadsheets, whichever. This could also be if maybe it's desktop research, or for linguists or computational linguists, this could also be in test formats, like TST formats. So this could be in different formats. But one thing that is very important, which makes familiarization with data organization very important, is that the way humans like to organize data is quite different from the way computers require data to be organized. So cast your mind back, for example, you have a spreadsheet data. And in the spreadsheet data that you've got, you've used some colors, for example, to actually demarcate, okay, this color, these were data that were collected in, let's say, January. And then you have another color, like blue, data that were collected in February, and all of that. That is how a human being would understand the data. But computers really wouldn't read it that way, depending on the software solution that you're also going to be using to process and admin into that data. So data need to be structured in order to use tools that make computation more efficient for two things: one, interoperability, and of course, further reuse. So we want that data across multiple systems, across multiple devices, not to have any form of limitation, which is why it is good to actually make use of open source solutions, which we're going to be talking about in a few moments, rather than proprietary software solutions, because then interoperability actually then doesn't become a challenge. And of course, further reuse is also easy to access. So what should we familiarize ourselves with, or what should a data librarian familiarize itself with regards to data organization? First of all, good data entry practices. How do you format your data in tables and in spreadsheets? How do you actually look at the data that you've collected, or that you're collecting, or that you intend to help a particular researcher collect, or your government, for example, for those in the public library, when we're talking about big data, how do you actually collect those data and all of that? What are the common formatting mistakes? For example, when you say, okay, I'll put some of this data in bold, do they count? Or I'm going to put some in red and some are going to be in green and all of that. All of those colors, you are the one who reads them, depending again on the software solution that you're using to further analyze this data. Those colorations doesn't actually work. Again, the handling of dates. So if I write a date, for example, I write 01/02/2022. For many of us on the African continent, we're going to be reading that as the 1st of February 2022. But in a particular situation where probably the researcher that you're working with, or part of those within that particular research project, they work across continents. So let's say there is someone in North America who wants to read that particular date. That particular date is going to be read as January 2nd, 2022. So how do you handle how do you handle dates with regards to data organization, basic quality control and data manipulation within your spreadsheets and your test files. And of course, the file and data format that you save in, that's also very important. Because if you save into a particular format that is proprietary, that might be a challenge. If you save into a particular format that no longer has devices to actually read the content of that data, that also becomes a challenge. So in this kind of case, you actually want to work with an open source format. So if it's a tabular data, you want to explore a CSV or a TSV. And if it's a test file, rather than make use of MS Word, for example, you actually want to make use of test, because then it becomes interoperable across multiple systems as well. Okay, how do you get started? The second thing that I would also say is important for a data librarian is Regex. So Regex actually stands for regular expression. And it is a string of text that lets you create patterns and help match and locate, and manage text. This will be very important if, for example, you're working with a data set that's on that it's in text format. Particularly, let's say you're doing computational linguistics within the arts and humanities, or you're working on such kind of data. So Regex is actually going to come in very handy. So it's used in different programming environments for sophisticated pattern matching. And they are also very powerful tools that you can use to amplify the capacity for you to find, to manage, and also to transform your data and files. So with regular expression, if you have good familiarity with it, you're going to be able to match on types of character. So for example, if you're looking for uppercase only, or you're looking for only digits. So imagine you have like 10 million pages of a document. Within the legal profession, that's also going to come in very handy. So if you're a data librarian and you're helping researchers within the legal profession, that is also going to come in very handy. I'm not sure if someone is trying to say something. I think a microphone is actually unmuted. Okay, thank you. And
Okay.
You want to match a particular type of character. So you're looking for just uppercase, for example, you're looking for just digits. So imagine you're looking for that in a 10,000 page document. That's and just a particular string of data you're looking for. You want a particular pattern and you want to repeat that pattern. You want to know how many times that particular pattern is repeated in a text. And you want to capture part of the original strings that match your pattern. Regular expression is going to help you to actually achieve that. So let's take, for example, as you can see from the screen, I'm actually trying to look for within a 10,000 page document, for example, a million word document. I'm trying to look for A, B, or C. I'm going to be able to use my square brackets to actually do this. So wherever A, B, or C actually appears within my database that I'm searching or my test that I'm searching, it's going to pull that up. And if I'm looking for just, for example, uppercase letters, I can put A to Z, and where uppercase actually is, that is going to be able to come out when I use my square bracket in this particular manner, when I run my string this way. But if I just want to match, upper or lower case, that I can do, and then or if I just want to match any lowercase or uppercase and all of that, there are different variations of matching and searching that you can actually do with regular expression. Okay, now, apart from familiarity, what are the open source tools that data librarians or that are available to data librarians that we can make use of as data librarians? Now, the first one I want to talk about is OpenRefine. This is still on how to get started. And OpenRefine is an open source application, as the name actually sounds. It used to be called Google Refine. So Google actually started a project, but eventually they moved it into an open source platform. So it's currently open source, no longer run by Google, and then changed from Google Refine to OpenRefine. And it is not proprietary, so it means that it's not owned by anyone. And it is a very useful tool for we as data librarians or for librarians who are within the data field. Now, it is a desktop application, even though it runs on your browser, and it's used to work with messy data. So the data could be messy, very unorganized, and it is brought in, it looks rather meaningless and all of that. You can actually use OpenRefine to bring in, to clean that particular data, to transform that data, or what is more commonly known within the data science field as data wrangling, to wrangle that particular data set in a clean and transformed manner, so that whatever next analytic tool that you want to use for that particular data, you can send it to it. And or sometimes, if it's just probably you're trying to make sure that any kind of privacy data is removed from a data set that you intend on posting into your data repository. For example, you can also make use of this. So after you do all of your cleaning, the data can then go into your data repository, either a public data repository or a closed data repository. But OpenRefine is also a very powerful tool. Now, it is similar to spreadsheet application. So you might actually want to ask the question, why don't I just use any other spreadsheet application, for example? And the reason is OpenRefine is open source, and you don't even need internet connection. This is a tool that you can actually get just by downloading it from the internet, and you have started your data librarianship journey. So, and you can use it as a spreadsheet to work on spreadsheet files such as your CSV and your TSV. You can even use it for JSON files. You can use it to query databases as well. And it's, of course, it behaves more like a database, but it's a very powerful tool and open source tool that many data scientists also use for data cleaning, especially for beginners as well. So it's a good place to start. And then the next one that I also want to talk about is Git. Many of you might have heard about version control. So I'll first of all talk about version control before I talk about Git itself or GitHub. So version control is basically a software that is used to record changes made to files in a directory. This is often associated with software development, but increasingly now they're being used to collaborate in research and academic environments as well. Now, many of you, I'm sure, if we were in a physical space, by show of hands, you were working on a particular file, let's say Word documents, and then you will save and you say final, and then you work on that again, you receive feedback with whoever you're collaborating with, and then you say final, and then you work on that again, and then you say, okay, final version 1. And then you work on that again, and then you say real final. And all of this could be confusing because, I mean, how long can you actually go with final, and version, and real final? Now, what Git actually does is that it helps maintain, with every change that you make, it helps track those versions of the changes that have been made. And if it's a work that is being collaboratively done, so let's say both of you will not in the same physical location, you're working from that particular file virtually, each of those versions are maintained when using Git, and you are able to revert to any of those versions or any particular time of that file that you might have worked on. So you really do not lose anything. And secondly, the steps that you have taken and all of the activities that you have done, if you were not even documenting them by hand, so if you were not having more like a go-to document that you were using to document each and every steps, or a how-to document that you were using to document every steps, Gits actually help you to keep each of those versions, and you can revert to each of those versions, and then you refresh your mind. Okay, this is what I actually did here, and all of that. So, what is the usefulness of Git? Of course, collaboration, version control allows to define, formalized ways that we can work together. Share writing and codes. You can merge sets of changes together from different parts, and two different versions of work that you're doing before, even if you merge them together, that doesn't actually become a challenge, because you know that you can get each of the individual versions back if that is the case. And you can also roll back to a particular version. So if you want the changes that you made, for example, in September, you can revert back to that and revert back to what you did or the state that you're in presently in November and all of that. Now, there are other tools as well that we can that are also very important or that we can use, but I've actually started with these two because, especially for data librarianship, they're a good place to start. You have Python, you have Arrow, which are also open source, and librarians can also play with these tools, use these tools. Use these tools in a manner that that make their work easy and make their work more efficient as data librarians. But starting with OpenRefine and Git, these have direct relationship in collaboration with what we currently do, some of the tasks we currently do. So for example, if you are managing your electronic resources as a librarian, if you're the one in charge of your scholarly databases, OpenRefine and Git would actually be useful for you. If you're in charge of acquisition, for example, these tools that I just mentioned would actually be useful for you. So it's not until you actually become a data librarian, and as you progress in your data librarian journey and practice, of course, Python can then come in, which is also open source. Arrow, if you're more acquainted with Arrow, you could also make use of Arrow. It's both a statistical and programming language as well. And there are other proprietary ones, which of course I'm not going to be touching on because we're not looking at the proprietary versions of data librarian tools, which we can actually make use of. Okay, so what next? As the moderator mentioned during the introduction, this is just the first in a series of these. This is actually a series, and in December, we're going to be having a hands-on online workshop, virtual workshop, online, with these tools that I just mentioned and how they work with real data sets from library settings, and how we can also start our data librarianship journey from there. So please keep an eye on those emails as they come along, and a survey, of course, would also have been sent out. Do well to also complete that survey as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salubi. Thank you for this insightful presentation. Colleagues, there are some questions in the Q&A. We'll take them very soon. Kindly put your questions in the Q&A if you have any questions, contributions, and or observations. At this time, before I take the questions, kindly permit me to indicate that this webinar is also supported by our host, AfLIA, and I want to specifically acknowledge the Executive Director of AfLIA, Dr. Helena Samoa Hassan, the Managing Director of AfLIA, Dr. Nkem Osugui, and the technical team of AfLIA for their unconditional support to the LETIS and to the organization of this webinar. I will also want to take this opportunity to once again invite individuals and institutions in the LIS profession who are not yet members of AfLIA to visit AfLIA's website via web.aflia.net to complete the forms and register to be a part of this great family. The links to the individual and institutional membership forms have also been shared in the chat room. Okay, so let me go into the Q&A. We have a question from Mohammed Kabiru Osman. So Mohammed is saying, 1, where funding is not a challenge, are non-proprietary tools for data librarianship better? And he has a follow-up question which states, what is the integrity and security of data when using non-proprietary data management tools as compared to using proprietary tools? So Dr. Salubi, if you are here, could you take up this one first before we move on?
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues, and thanks, Mohammed, for this very for this question. So the first one you're talking about, where funding isn't a challenge, are non-proprietary tools better? I would say, I wouldn't want to say which is better or which is best, but one good thing about making use of open source tools is that you have a community of developers that maintain these tools that you really don't need to pay for. So if you're making use of a proprietary software, for example, you're going to have to contact whoever it is that the vendor is to actually get help. Whereas if you're making use of open source tools, you don't really need a vendor to pay for such maintenance. And it's not an, it's more like an open community, an endless open community of developers who maintain this software, and they also provide solutions when such is, when there is any challenge. So I wouldn't really put better or best or in such comparative category. I would actually just say work with what it is that works for your library best. But where funding is a challenge, we definitely shouldn't be disadvantaged, because we have open source tools that we can also use to do this work. And by the way, it might amaze you, I'm not sure, to know that many of these top data science organizations and many of these institutions, I know of top organizations here in South Africa that make use of R and Python for their work. So, and these are open tools. So it's not a matter of should we go for a proprietary versus non-proprietary? And then what is the integrity and security of data? With regards to that, that will mainly be coming from you as the data manager or the data librarian. There's not, and again, the repository or the database where you're depositing your data, how secured is that particular repository? Other than that, there really not be any form of security breaches while making use of open source tools. Not any that I've read of in any way. Thanks, Mohammed. Not sure if that answers the question.
Okay, thanks very much, Salibu. I think your Mohammed's question is answered. If not, Mohammed, you could come back again with another question and you will surely be answered. Before I take on the next question, I can see that most of the questions coming in are asking whether the recordings will be sent. Now, this recording for this webinar will be uploaded on AfLIA's YouTube page. So kindly go on to AfLIA's YouTube page and you'll find it there immediately after this webinar. A couple of our colleagues are also asking whether certificates will be issued. The information is that this session will not include any certificates of participation. However, for those of you who would be part of the in-person workshop, you will certainly receive certificates of participation. Now, a couple of our colleagues are also asking about hands-on practical presentations, etc. Now, colleagues, if you remember, as our facilitator was indicating in the closing remarks, he indicated that today's webinar is just the first in the series of activities organized by AfLIA's LETIS to shape and further the agenda for the sustainability of African information professionals through leading them to understand open source applications. Now, may I kindly inform you that this webinar will be followed by an online workshop from Thursday 8 to Saturday 10 December 2022. And the finals of the series on data librarianship will take place in May 2023 next year. A colleague was asking, as a physical workshop and pre-conference during the 5th AfLIA conference and the 7th African Library Summit, which will be held in Accra, Ghana. You can kindly visit AfLIA's website for more information. Okay, so let's take on the next question. The next question is on a minute. Somebody is asking whether you can recommend other means by which they can have training themselves to augment this webinars. Maybe any of the panel members or executives of the LETIS can come into the Q&A and answer this question. Paco Dick is saying, my question is to Doc, is data expire, and if so, how long can data be stored for you? So Dr. Salibu, he is asking if data expires, and if so, how long can data be stored for use?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. So with regards to the data that has been collected, depending on what it is that it's been collected for and how it's been collected, one would want to assume that, first of all, ethical guidelines have been followed, and if, for example, depending on the jurisdiction and institution that you're in, you've gotten ethical clearance for the collection of that data. All of those statements would have been mentioned there, how long the data is going to be for and all that. And if it's you working with a researcher, for example, for a particular research grant that is being applied for, the grant holders, not the grant holders, the funders will be the one to tell you, okay, this is how long we want this data to be perpetually available in an open source repository. Then you have to follow their mandate because they are the one funding for that research. Otherwise, in a situation where no form of definitive lifespan has been given, the choice then lies on you. How long do you want your data to be available, and where do you actually want to put that particular data? So there are a number of journal-like data archives now that you can publish your data, your research data. So for example, Data First, what you just do is you explain that data with all of the notes and all of that, and then it gets published just the way you publish your article. Some universities offer data repositories where you can deposit your data. So if your institution have one, you can deposit that data there and all of that. And one thing that is very important is that if you've collected data, care should also be taken that personal information are cleaned out before you upload such into a public repository, because you want to protect the identity of your respondents.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salibu. There's another question here asking whether they could consider Tableau as one of the tools. Is it okay to consider Tableau as one of the tools?
Definitely, if you have proficiency in the use of Tableau, of course you can make use of it. There are many data scientists who are also making use of Tableau. Like I said, the list is endless. Depending on what you have proficiency is, that's what you should actually go for. But at the end of the day, there is no one tool that actually have, or that I would say it's better than the other. It all depends on what it is that you want to do. Because, for example, what I can do with OpenRefine, I can also do with Arrow. But if I don't have proficiency in Arrow, I'd rather want to use OpenRefine. So it's just a matter of choice at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you very much. I think our next question is, he's saying, Hawa Moruf is saying, thank you very much for this timely webinar, and is asking how data librarianship is related to bibliometrics.
Okay, thank you very much, Hawa, for that question. I'm not sure if it's the Hawa that we went to school together, but bibliometrics in itself, we can actually say it's more of an aspect of data librarianship. We can class it. But when we're looking at bibliometrics, we're not looking at it in the broader sense of, okay, what does this actually mean? We're mainly just looking at the bibliographies or the whatever pattern that you're actually looking at. But when we're talking about data librarianship here, so let's take, for example, that I collect data like the survey which has been sent out now, and this is a particular data, and I want to clean that data, and I want to look out for patterns, for example. Which particular countries actually have more data inclined data librarians, for example? That could be a pattern that I want to look at. I can take that data with other existing data that I have access to, and also do some analysis and play around with it. Those you really cannot do when it comes to bibliometrics, because you basically just focus on a particular set of literature to do. So it's a subset of it, it's related to it. I'm not a bibliometrics person. I'm not sure if there are tools that you use for bibliometrics, but we can look at it, because of course it deals quantitatively with numbers. We can look at it as a subset of data librarianship. Howard?
Thank you very much, Dr. Salupi, for this answers. Thank you very much, colleagues. We are still looking in the Q&A for questions. I'll quickly run to the chat room and see if some members have posted some questions there. No, I can see the AfLIA membership and institutional membership links being shared. Kindly go to these links and register if you are not yet a member of AfLIA. Someone is asking, Dr. Salupi, I was tempted to answer this question, but I think I'll throw it to you. It's asking whether you can recommend any other means by which he can train himself or themselves to augment these webinars.
Okay, so with the December workshop, which we're going to be having, we actually going to be talking about some of those tools, and all of these tools, they're also available openly. So we look forward to seeing you there. The organization that I also volunteer for as an instructor is it's a non-profit, and all our resources are also in open access. Just make use of the Creative Commons for your references. The carpentry, so you can look them up, the carpentries.org. So there is a particular lesson there called the library's carpentry. So the tools that I mentioned here, or some of the tools that I mentioned here, are explained in details there. And some of those tools we're also going to be looking at in December, during the December workshop. So we look forward to seeing you, and also the one in Ghana. We look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salibu. I think we'll take the last question. Magongo is asking, can it be possible to get a list of the open source software suitable for data librarians?
I can actually do more like a compilation, and then if those could be sent out, but a few of the ones which I've mentioned during this webinar are a good place to start, especially if you don't have any experience and expertise in data librarianship. They're a very good place to start. OpenRefine it's very user friendly and is a desktop application, so you really don't need internet connection to use it. The same also goes for your Gits, your Unix shell. That's also another good tool as well. Your R is also there, but again, that requires some form of expertise to use more. The learning curve for R is much more than that for OpenRefine. So these are tools that you want to have some level of familiarity with before you actually delve into. Python is also there. Those are also open source tools that librarians could also make use of. So the list is endless, actually.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salibu. I can see a number of congratulatory messages in the chat room. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Dr. Salibu, for being our facilitator for today. And thank you to all participants all over Africa and around the world for attending this all-important workshop. We really do appreciate your presence. I can see congratulations to the organizers for this webinar, good initiative. Thanks for the useful information, etc. Thank you all very much. Once again, I'd like to indicate that the recordings for this webinar will be uploaded on AfLIA's YouTube page. So you can quickly go to AfLIA's YouTube page after this webinar and download the recordings to this webinar. This section will not include any certificates. However, we are encouraging all of you to be part of the series of workshops for this particular webinar, Data Librarianship, which is happening from 8th May, Thursday, 8th to 10 December 2022, sorry. And then the finals of the series on data librarianship, which will take place in May 2023 as a physical workshop and pre-conference during the 5th AfLIA Conference and 7th African Library Summit happening in Accra, Ghana. All information pertaining to this particular workshop can be found on the AfLIA's website. Colleagues, all too soon, we've come to the end of this webinar. My name is Monica Mensah Dankwa from the University of Ghana Department of Information Studies Department, and I have been your moderator for this webinar. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.
All right, I'll end the session now. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Salome.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity. Thank you. Please, I'm not sure if you want to send out the link.
Which links are
sorry?
For the survey?
Which one are you talking about?
The survey link.
It's here. But I think I actually forgot to mention it.
Okay. Stanley, please, is it possible?
No problem. If there's a survey link, just share it with me because we have details of all the participants, and then we'll push it to them for them to
via email.
So share that with me.
Okay.
And Dr. Salubi, I'll be expecting your presentation as well because I'll circulate it.
Not a problem at all. So I'll send the presentation as well as the link to be emailed to participants to come. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Dr.
you very much.
Good afternoon.
Oh, Dr. Nkem is here.
Yeah, I can see her, but I think she's rather. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Salome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Doc.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Doc.
Thank you very much.